We're going to be looking at running aspect-oriented programs. And for this, we can look to our following code right here. We're in the main class. In the previous video, we went over how to set all of this up, and that's in the playlist link below the like button. So in our inputs here, we need to reference the items class in here so that we can use it. We also need the application context to use this, and the last import is to get the path and reader XML file. Inside of our main method, we're just going to be configuring. So we're setting up our application context, setting it to the name context, and passing in our XML file to our class path XML application context. In here, we make a new of type item called item, casting it as an item because context returns an object. We do .get bean. Basically, we know that we have a bunch of beans in our XML file right here, and then we want to get the item bean 1, and this item bean 1 is going to be this right here. So we're going to call it here. We're going to be in our main method, and we're storing it in item right here, cast as an item. Now we want to do a print line to actually print this. So we're going to print out the item created, and then we have our item.toString. And this is going to print this first part right here. So inside of here, we are printing out our item ID, the item name, the item price, and the available quantity. That is from here, going through and placing all of this. We know that if we go into our item class, if we have a toString method, it's just going to call this and it's going to print it. Now, what if we do item.print item details? Because remember, item accesses everything from inside of our application context. And so inside of here, we know that we've dealt with print item details. And because of how we have this set up with the point cuts, if we go into our items, we have our print item details. This is very, very simple. We're just basically calling our toString here with a little bit more information for like the date that's going to be here as well. But anyways, the important part is that for aspect-oriented programming, we are going to actually print out before this our logo that we made in our main, or not in our main, in our aspect config class right here. So we're going to use the print logo and print it out here. We're basically saying we have this method right here, we have this method, print logo, and we want to print it out beforehand. So we are going to be doing this in our item.print item details, and we get this information right here. We went over that in the previous video as well. So that is our output. Now, we might get an error when we're trying to run this if this is created successfully. And this is because I realized in our XML file that the actual imports right here for the URLs were not correct. So what I had to do is I had to go into the Spring, just the website tutorials.point whatever it says right here, and it's for Spring. It's also in the description below the like button. Inside of here, we're just going to copy all of this and paste it for our URL. So that's important to work with, and that's important to know. Without it, we would be running this incorrectly. Now we're going to look at different ways point cuts references can be defined, and we're going to switch back to our XML file for this. So our expression inside of here is only going to be able to match what it defines. It can only match one method in our application. Realistically, we want to modify this to make this more generic, since we will have multiple other point cut expressions to work with. So inside of here, we can see that we get all of the methods inside of here, and then we have our item right here. So we're getting all of our method returns inside of item in the item.java, and then we have this right here. So this is going to be our new what we have to do to make it more generic, right? This gets everything inside of here. Our previous one was very, it was like this. It was very, very locked down, where we had to get the exact method, .print item details. But this one, we have the star, it gets everything inside of this class right here. We don't have to get this everything inside of this exact method. So that's important to note. That's a change that we just made. So that's how we would do that. And now that it is like that, we can still run it and see that it still works. So if we run it like this, we are going to see that we actually hit a breakpoint because I accidentally ran it as a breakpoint. But it's going to print out here as well. So we're getting the item being 1, we get this item was created, and then we are going to print these details as well. We can see that we get our logo right here for both of them. There is a slight difference though. this item to string, we are getting the item, we are getting the logo right here, and then we're getting the item that we created. When we do the print item details, notice, remember we call the logo first. Instead of our print details, we are going to have this like time, and then we are going to have this item part right here. So that's the only difference. Now, another way we can tailor this is by putting like private and or voids inside of here. So let's say we want to have a private void and then whatever kind of method we want. So this is still private void and accesses any method inside of our item class. Well, if we were to run this, we're going to see that we would just get the item created and the details for the item. Remember that these are separate, so we should actually just space these out a little bit more. But this item being 1 is going to get this first part right here. It's not going to get our logo anymore right here because of the fact that if we look in our item, we can see it is a public void. And since it's a public void, it's not allowed to print. Now, if we change this to public void, we can go ahead and run our main. And we are going to be able to see that our logo prints out perfectly fine. What if we want to change this again? So let's say we want to access a getter and a setter, right? Let's do a sysout, and we'll just do some spacing right here. And then appending to this, we're going to do item.get, and we'll just get the item name. And let's try to run this. Well, we are able to print out our bread. Now it's public void, but let's say we just wanted to print out the variables like that. If we make it public string, you're going to see that it prints this out as well. So doing that, we can see we actually have this logo printed out and then our bread. So that's just something to note right there. Let's just try, instead of having it public string, let's just have it as a public like this. And if it's a public, we can run it again, and we're going to get an error right here. And I guess that's also because we need kind of like a type right here. So we would need like a void, we would need a string, we would need something like that. So if we just do public void like this, we have our super generic in there, and we run it again, we are going to be able to output what we want. So the item created, which is this, for our item being 1, and then we have our logo and this right here, and then we're also able to get our item name because it is a public type. So that's ways we can change and modify our XML in here, public, void, and then we can change whatever we want inside of here. And this is just to get any specific kind that we're looking at, to modify it, to change it, and to limit it. And that's it for running aspect-oriented programs. We're going to be looking more into this next video in the playlist link below the like button. We're specifically going to be working with point cut expressions.